Hey everyone, my name is Sampa The Great. My hip hop is being your full spectrum and range of who you are. Hip hop is not just one thing, it's many, and so are you as a spirit, as a soul. And hip hop has helped and healed me into being able to express myself in the full, total range and accept myself for who I am. That's my hip hop.
This is Radio Freedom.
If you don't stand up for something, you'll fall for anything.
Come on! Listen!
Planet Earth, planet rap. Planet Earth, planet rap. Planet Earth, planet rap. The only segment show and station in the hip hop world playing the hip hop world. In the hip hop world playing the hip hop world. With Miko and I'm
Hello and welcome to the penultimate episode of the PEPR Virtual World Tour series, which we've been a part of for quite a while now. My name is Angélique.
Yes, absolutely. My name is Miko, and yeah, for the duration of this spring of 2022, we've been having this great opportunity to speak some of our favorite artists, and I'm just so happy about the list of artists that we've been able to talk to. I think it's been really incredible, actually.
Yeah, it is quite a list, very illustrious. We spoke to Low Key, to Major One from Singapore, Malaysia.
Yes, Canada, and we were talking to Promo from Loop Troop Rockers in Sweden. He's a really amazing artist who we've come a long way with.
Yes, Eugen Blackrock from South Africa, now in Spain.
Yes, absolutely.
Cynic from Zim, now in Lisbon.
Yeah, everybody is now in somewhere. But Kamau is from Sao Paulo, Brazil, and I think he's
still in Sao Paulo. It's been really great to just get some insight into the artists themselves. You know, oftentimes we really just get to know their work, we interact with their work and not get the opportunity to actually speak to the artists themselves. So this was really great.
Yeah, and today in this particular episode, we're talking somebody who was somewhere else, but now she's back. Of course, multi-local. It was a really great interview.
Sampa. Yes, Sampa The Great, originally from Zambia and Botswana, and of course based in Australia once upon a time, and now back in Zambia.
Now back in Zambia, between Zambia and Botswana, and we caught her when she was visiting her parents in Gaborone in Botswana. Happens to be my old hometown as well for a brief spell, 1 year or so. So that's always nice. But it was a really great interview, and I think that we really caught her in the eye of the storm in that sense that where she's coming from, like a 1 month of North American tour, Coachella, all of that stuff. She's got a new song out with Denzel Curry, and she is featured. Her song Energy is featured on this Netflix show Ozark, which is a big thing. I haven't watched it, but it's a big thing.
I think it's a big thing when your song is featured on any popular production on Netflix or anywhere else for that matter. So she's really doing great. She's done great work, and she's had a very busy time post-pandemic. I don't know if we can say post-pandemic, but yeah, now that people can move around, she's been able to tour and do so much work. So you'll get to hear more about this in this episode of the Conversations series and of our virtual world tour.
Absolutely, yes. Up next for her, there is also Sydney Opera House for 2 nights. So now, no small feat that either. You can find these episodes, this whole series in its entirety from anywhere and everywhere where you can listen to podcasts from, and also the visuals are exclusively for now on Rap Station app, which you can get from RSTV. App.com. That's where you can find it and get to your device.
Yes, so thank you for joining us, and please do enjoy the ride with Sampa The Great here on PEPR Virtual World Tour Series.
I think my body forgot how hectic touring can be. I was just like, I'm tired.
Exactly. Especially after hibernating during COVID. Right.
Oh my gosh. Like 2 years of nothing, 2 years of just, you yourself, your thoughts, your music, and then all of a sudden it's like, go in a different city every night, performing every night, no sleep, Coachella, nice. But it's been good.
It sounds amazing, but exhausting. I'm thinking to myself, how are you doing this? How are you even having a moment to talk to people?
Well, we take breaks like this. It's been a week of just like rest, which is good before we step into the next tour. So these breaks really, really help.
And whereabouts are you now at the moment?
Right now I'm in Botswana. So we came back to Zambia and I just flew over to Botswana to see my parents. And then I think next week we're in Australia.
Oh my God.
Let's have a quick sort of like let's place you at the moment. So last month you've been doing a North American tour. It seemed like a great success. It seemed like you really like had a nice time, plus audience as well. Coachella was part of it. You have a new song out with Denzel Curry. The music video is out now. It's out now?
Yeah, it's out.
Yes,
And
your song Energy was just on a very, very popular Netflix show, Ozark. And later on this month, you're going to be performing a few nights, no less than in the Sydney Opera House. Not bad.
No wonder you're exhausted.
Okay, it's not too shabby.
Not too shabby at all.
Yeah.
Tell us, what's it been like, this turbulent time, whirlwind like?
I think because we missed it so much that once it started happening, it was like, yes, we get to do this again. Obviously, tour exhaustion kicks in after the excitement where you're like, oh, I haven't slept. And, you know, you sort of deal with that in knowing there'll be a different audience that has never been introduced to you before. And you want to bring the same energy as you've done, you know, in your last shows and being really mindful of rest, mindful of everything to do with our bodies. It's much of a show thing as it is health, making sure we're taken care of, making sure we rest. That's always been a good balance. But the excitement of just being able to tour again, do shows again, was just overwhelming because we didn't know we were going to be able to do that. And then on top of that, just slowly introducing new music to our audience, which I've never done. Like, it's scary to just introduce new music in general, but to introduce that and then see people's reaction, like face to face, bad idea. Why am I doing this? But it was amazing because you got to see people's first connection with the new songs.
Yes.
Like people singing them back after the second chorus, and you're like, wow, like you really vibing with this song. And it's, you know, being able to explain the message firsthand in person, and then why this story of the song is the way it is, and having a live rendition of the song, which for me is usually different to my tracks. I think it's been really helpful. I've never done, you know, introducing new music like this before. And I think it's a really beautiful way to do it face to face. It's like, guys, look what I've been working on. Here's the music. Here's the story behind it. Because usually it's just technology is doing the explanations. You're doing it over socials, and this is now real human interaction and connection with the song. So it's been beautiful. It's been overwhelming at points because, you know, a lot of things happened. Coachella happened, San Francisco happened, and then it was straight to Lane. And I was like, yeah, so here we are. But I can't complain because it's been really beautiful, and it's a huge leap from nothing for 2 years to here we are. Let's go.
How is of course you know you're not like you say you are at their parents' place, and it's not like you're a child there, but we always are parents' children. So when you come from Coachella and you come from this tour, and then your parents say that, can you take the bins out? Then are you just telling them that I'm a star? No, I'm not gonna.
There is nothing like that in this house. I'm cooking dinner tonight. There is nothing like that here. I think the most exciting stuff for my parents was seeing me work on a Angélique Kidjo song on her
Yes.
album, and they were like, wow. Everything else is like, okay, what's Coachella? What is that? But that one, that one they were really excited about. And I think I really appreciate just coming back home and it just being normal times. And, you know, we just talk to each other. That's a perspective that I think I'll always appreciate. And I love that my family's just really chill.
Yeah. I think also it helps keep a person feel grounded. And if you've been on the
100%.
go, you need to replenish some way and somehow. And I think home is also that space. It's quite nurturing, and also there's no pressure. You can just
Yeah.
be.
Exactly.
You briefly mentioned there the Angélique Kidjo. That's a Grammy Award winning album that you were part of there, casually.
Excellent.
Like it ain't nothing but a thing.
Just everything, right? That was huge. That's beautiful. That's generational as well. Like my parents heard her, my parents' friends heard her, and now I'm here listening to her music and working with her. That's a huge feat for me. That's something I'll keep within my memory as a big win.
Yeah. I think from what you've just described of what happened after COVID and with all the touring, with all the new offerings, everything, it's like when they say that's a feather to your hat, I think you have a big hat by now with many feathers. Well done, you. But this must be a pivotal point. You know, they say in life you meet maybe 5 pivotal people in your life and you experience at least 5 pivotal times in your life. Would you say this is also a pivotal point for you?
100%. I mean, the return to me was all the heart and soul, you know. After that was released, it was like, okay, let's go tour the world. And then COVID was like, nah. And you go from that biggest high to, okay, I have no control of any of this. And it really takes you on an inward journey. It's like, if I wasn't doing music as a career, what would I have done? Because this is my whole life. And it was a really important inner journey. I mean, self-discovery has always been part of my music, but this inner journey where, you know, you question living without your purpose was quite deep. And it revealed a lot of beautiful takes that will come out through the music. But this is us coming back and being like, no, this is my purpose. This is music. This is what I'll do regardless of whether I have shows or not. And it's a really huge time in my life on just things that I never thought I would, you know, express, that I'm expressing now, that would be broken down later, that I don't want to say in the podcast. But just, you know, things that you're really a part of your character that you kind of shy away from because you've been doing this for a while. And now we're showing the full spectrum of who Sampa Tembo is through the next, you know, couple of projects or artworks. And the only way that would have happened is if the pandemic happened, to be honest. And yeah, it's really provided this pivotal inward journey that as we see, the artist has just elevated itself in a different way through Lane. And so I'm really excited for that to be shown to everybody.
Let's go a little bit sort of back in time. I remember I was actually checking just now earlier today that it was in 2016 that I found your name for the first time in our playlist. That was a song called Mona Lisa at the time.
Hey.
And at the time you were like this, the way that we understood it, it was like you were this artist from Australia, originally from Zambia. But
By way of Botswana.
By way of Botswana. And we've kind of like mentioned these different countries already, but so what's your story? You were born in Zambia and then what?
Born in Zambia, moved to Botswana at age 6, I'd say, and just raised between the two countries. Like every time the parents are off work, we'll find a way to go back to Zambia, see my cousins, see my grandmas before they passed, and just still keep connected to where we're from, even though we were raised in a different country for financial reasons. You know, it's not like we were like, we're done with Zambia and we went. And I think, you know, people relate to that story of just, you know, living or being raised outside of your ancestral home. It's what happens. I think it just gets a bit diluted when you have to be based somewhere else, and when there's careers involved and people wanting to attach, now she's from here to the story, and that's where it becomes unclear. And I think for being based in Australia, I really wanted to make it apparent that the music that's being praised comes from this country that people wouldn't think it would come from. Same with the visuals. People don't expect such high level, quote unquote, things to be coming from the continent. And that's definitely a stereotype that I want to break. So in saying I'm from Zambia, not because it's actual fact, it's also just reminding people that such stuff happens from the continent, from my country. And I just, was afforded the opportunity and the privilege to be able to express that in a different country.
Yeah, I was listening to you speak to an interviewer in one of the podcasts, and you were saying that when you went abroad to the US, when you went to the US for the first time, you had all these shattered illusions, and you realized that the way people saw you was a different way from what you thought, and probably different from how you saw yourself. And I'm sure that shaped your identity or how you negotiate identity. Coupled with that, coming from Botswana and Zambia and Botswana, that would influence the way you see yourself. How do you negotiate issues of identity pertaining to you and your experience?
I mean, that experience was basically the birth of the Sampa Temple you see today. I think I had to be shaken out of my worldview or my little roof of being raised on the continent. I had to see more. I had to know the global conversation of Africa. I had to be shaken enough to pinpoint my identity for myself versus being comfortable at home. And once that happened, it was the journey of really being specific about what I identify as and where my roots come from. Being raised in a different country than where I'm from already provides its own, difficulties. But then going into the global scene and having to be one thing so that people can understand you more has always been a struggle, because I'm not one thing.
I was going to say that's difficult.
I don't think any of us are. And to be pushed into a place where you have to identify as one thing, I think even birthed I'm just going to make different lanes. That attitude and mentality of that's just something that's not possible and not what people would have to do. So I'm going to be this person who was born from here, raised from here, based here, does this music that is not one thing, and you're just going to have to deal. And I think that's just been the mentality throughout my art is I don't want you to pinpoint it to one thing, because that's not why it was made. And that was all birthed in that time, and it's just followed through in the journey.
I think the time that you were in Australia, that was something you went there to study, if I'm correct. Yeah. But at the time when you were kind of like on a come up there in Australia, it was a kind of interesting time also in Australian hip hop. There was a lot of the indigenous, of course, they had always been indigenous artists and different things, but I think there was a kind of especially moment in time, which I'm sure continues now, but it really was like happening in a different way that it had been before, AB original, all those various different things. What do you think? Did that relate to your come up? How should I say? Because I'm not trying to make a long question, but Australian hip hop before that, it was a little bit like a beer rap. Like it was a lot about that type of you know what I mean. And then all of a sudden, and not all of it, but it was kind of like the image was a little bit like that. And then all of a sudden, it changed quite a lot. And that was also similar times when you were there, I suppose.
100%. My career started in Australia when we were going through a Black renaissance in hip hop music. Previous to that, it was just one perspective by one type of people living in one part of Australia, which didn't look like everybody else. And at that time, when you call Australia a multicultural country, you need to back that with facts. And so I think I was one of the people who wasn't really scared to say a lot of shit. I wasn't. And I think my privilege in that was I was able to come home.
Yeah.
I was able to talk my shit. And if you don't like me, cool, I'll just go back home. Whereas a lot of people weren't afforded that privilege. And I recognized that very early and was like, okay, if that's my privilege, then let me do my part in this movement. You know, we're going to bring these stories to mainstream, to the forefront, because they are Black people in Australia and they are Black people in Australian music, and that should be known globally. And there were a couple, AB Original, like you've mentioned, Remy and Sensible J, myself, Enfa, and, Immortal Technique, all these OGs who had started rumbling that. And I guess it just took a crazy young girl from Africa to be like, me too. And, it got global attention. Yeah. And I think once that started, everyone's fear was just like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. Oh, this is the time? Okay, cool, let's go. And left, right, center projects were coming out where people were just saying what they felt and representing where they were from. And it was popping up from everywhere that the Australian media had no choice but to talk about it. There was no choice. It was like we all had this, I guess, mental, spiritual agreement that we were going to do this. And from all sides, Indigenous, African, Islander, all Torres Island, everybody was just like, cha. And from there, it's just been, wow, look at all the young Black artists coming up. Like, we never thought that this would happen. And they're amazing too. They're not just sticking to one thing. It's not just hip hop, it's pop, it's rock, things that are considerably not Black music, but are like across the range. And I think, that time, that Renaissance time, is what birthed all of this. And I was glad to be a part of it, and glad to speak my mind on the experiences I was having as an African artist in Australia, the struggles we were going through to get the exact same thing as our peers with the same amount of talent. And that did shape the music 100%. And I guess being back home, there will be a redirection in the music because I'm not in that same mind frame anymore. But yeah, that was a huge time. That was a huge, huge time.
Yeah. I find it so interesting that, like whenever we speak to you guys, to you artists on this particular series, we always ask people, so what got you into hip hop? What inspired us? And I heard that, you started early, age 9, you saw someone, heard Tupac, Changes, yes, and that moved you, and you thought, well, this could be a possible form of expression. Yeah. This is what you say. How has that evolved over the years? Because now you've just described a movement, like what you described as happening in Australia. It's like you really shook things, and that takes almost like an activist spirit, So where does activism and rap collide, and does it sneak up on you? 2 questions there.
Yeah, I mean, even just down to what's on my phone, that's Tupac, right?
Yay!
We went to his museum in LA, and it just says poet, prophet, sinner, saint, artist, activist. Yeah. He was just able to encompass all of what he is. Just going back to how I was introduced, heard Tupac Changes, heard someone who was talking but still rapping. Yes. And the music behind that was so calming that I was, because as a middle kid, you're like, hey, can I tell you something? And everybody paying attention to the younger one or the older one. And you find yourself in a space where you feel you can't express yourself. So my avenue was straight up notebooks. It's like, okay, if you can't hear me, let me just write something down and I'll bring that back to you. And that became my form of communication. If I couldn't express myself, I just write it down. And here you have someone who's a poet, who's able to express everything that he's feeling, including his emotions, and do it well through music. So when I heard that as a kid, I was like, wow, I want to be able to do that. Because at this current moment, I can't express myself fully. I want to be able to do it like that with music. And from then on, it's just been a constant journey of how to express myself the best through music. and seeing that people actually connect to that through their lives and how they're healing and how they're growing. And I think that has evolved to this moment where you get to see that everything is you, very passionate. The whole, it's my home. We were always encouraged to express ourselves. You know, there's something happening in Zambia. What do you think about that? It's like, I'm 10, Dad. I don't know what I think about that. Well, express yourself, because your voice means something. And I think if you raise kids in that way, then they're always ready to give their 2 cents on a situation and express how it makes them feel. You know, we were encouraged to have emotional intelligence well early in our childhood, and that has just carried itself throughout our lives.
And through music, you found that music could be your language of emotion.
100%. So when you're in a situation where you understand that people who look like you are in an unfair tipping scale, where we're not allowed to afford the same privileges as other people, then you're just expressing what you feel about it. Not thinking that will start any movement or anything. It's just, this is happening. This is happening to me and people who look like me. Why? As humans, why? Let's answer that question. And that stems into what we know as activism in its smallest form. It's just like, we're all having a human experience. Why is mine different to you? And why is mine worse? And I think from then on, like-minded people with the same mentality would connect as well and tell their struggles of where they live. And that's the beauty of being in these different places. Go to the States. Okay, how is your experience here? How's your living experience here? Go to London. How is your living experience? Go to Australia. How's your living? And these conversations is what stems up this type of music. And I don't think we expected it to be a movement, but it's so, you know, passionate, and it's felt throughout each of us that it grows into something that changes the course of music in a country. And that's what that was. Yeah.
Awesome.
One part of, like, when we're talking about the movement, there's also the aspect that's that you don't come alone. Like when you go and perform, you have a full band, you've got, you know, backup singers, the whole, like, it's quite it's a production, but it's really, I mean, we haven't really had the opportunity to see you live one day. For sure that will happen, but it looks really impressive. Is that an important thing to you? Was there ever like a chance when you have a North American tour that you would just take your MP3s and memory stick to give them to a sound man and go and perform by yourself?
I mean, I love that. I still love that. And that's still a huge part of hip hop music, you know, it's the turntables and the DJ desk. And I appreciate that. But I also understand that my culture provides a platform where I can express music in different ways. I was just born around live music. So I can't just limit it to that. Like the translation has to continue in a broad way. And even in saying that, I just don't believe, you know, the music making process ends in the studio. That still continues into the live. Like we're still bringing you into the story. And that, for me, the best way to do that is through a band. The best way to tell you that story and bring you into the emotions that surrounded that story. And let you hear the harmonies the way I heard them when I wrote them. You know, I can't rap and do it at the same time. So here are BVs to bring you into that space. I have to bring you into the world for you to understand the music. And I guess that's just how I see it. Not that I'd never do a DJ set or not that I'd never do a 3-piece, but I've just found that this is the best way for me to tell the full story, where it just doesn't end in the studio, like, you know.
It brings in, it presences, if there's such a word, the music differently. It brings in as a presence strongly.
100%.
Yeah.
So and just bring your family along is dope. Just being able to do that now is dope. So yeah.
But that's also an important thing, right?
100%. I mean, that's why, you know, this pursuit was made. It's like, okay, if I'm able to do this as the first in my family, it means Mwanje can walk through this easily. means, artists in Zambia, where we've never been afforded an opportunity to do this on the international scale, can be like, oh, we can actually do that. I mean, an opportunity was granted to me, and this is just the paid forward sort of mentality. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's your sister was also been part of the group that travels with you and sings on the background. She's now also having is it a single EP album?
Yeah, EP. Yeah,
EP.
She's about to leave this band now and be like, I got my own stuff. Still have it for now.
Good for her. Good for her. Now, you spoke about self-discovery earlier on, and how the COVID period afforded all of us actually time to reflect and introspect and do more self-discovery. How has your journey in hip-hop as a Black woman? I know this is always going to come up. We're always going to speak on gender representation and how you maintain the feminine energy, your energy in the space, and what keeps that going. I refer to them energy video, and it blew my mind because it is the epitome of the divine feminine to me. You epitomize that. How do you nurture that?
I mean, that's a very important question to the next phase of my music. I think, being in the genre of hip hop, you're always expected to be this hard rap chick, or you're on the other side of the spectrum. And for me, it was just, I could be all of this. Like I can rap hard for you, be an intellectual, twerk, and then, go about my business. Like, why can't I be all? And, I've really tried to balance and maintain that through my expression, but understanding also that I can't let fear and the perception of me as an African woman deter the way I express. And for a long time, I've always been like, let's stay away from, we're going to encourage the balancing of feminine and masculine energy, but you're not going to find me in a gold swimsuit in the cave trying to do and lo and behold, here we are with Elaine, because there's just in femininity from its nurturing aspect to it visually that I didn't want it to be exploited. To get expressed that in my way, through my art and my healing to where I'm most comfortable within. And that's just been a growing now, where it's just, I will express this in its totality. But it's always been a thing for me to be able to balance both, especially in a genre that is very masculine, very male dominated. Yeah. Being able to step in. I think a good example is Lauryn Hill, man, being able to step into this in my feminine form and still be better than the guys, but still maintaining who I am. Like, I don't have to try and appease to the guys or try and appease to the women either. I could still just be me. And I think she was the best example of that for me. And I've very much tried to maintain that through my journey. Yeah.
How much do you like? It always keeps coming up. I'm an aging hip hop head, and I remember the time when there was a thing like African hip hop. That was a very interesting and fascinating, and it covered like various different parts of the continent, and there was this kind of like there were some platforms where you could kind of like follow it even online, and it was that type of thing. Do you think that now, of course, things are very different, and there's so many different artists from so many different places that nobody can know everything about it or even the big part of it. Everybody just knows whatever they know about it. But do you think that is that some kind of like an umbrella that you feel like you fall under, or is it is it necessary, or how do you feel about that?
I feel like it's very necessary. I wish those times would come back, actually. I think with the emergence of Afrobeat, it's been like, dope, this is African music. And it's kind of put a blanket term on a very diverse continent. And that's kind of diluted the style that I that I do, because I don't do Afrobeat. I don't do African music per se, but a mixture of a lot of different things. But I wish those times would come back, because it's very dope to specify where music is coming from, because there's a culture involved in that. And if you put a whole blanket term on it, then it becomes very difficult for people to express themselves fully from where they're from without being pushed into another box. So I'm never one to be like, this is specifically me, but I'm also not one to be like, you fall under this blanket term. Yeah. And world music has been that conversation with Angélique winning and you know, Wizkid and so on. And just even recently, Billboard put energy under world music. And I was like, what is that? Like, what is the whole world music? But, you know, Latin music can be Latin music. And you know, we would just appreciate for the broadness of the continent to be highlighted, as well as us knowing that it's African music. There's so many different genres in the continent alone. There's no way you can just broaden that into one term. But for hip hop specifically, I definitely wish there was the resurgence of calling something African hip hop and being specific with where it is in Africa. I wish that, you know, a renaissance of that can happen. Definitely.
It sounds to me also that like the context around the music, like you were talking about earlier, how you were introducing the new music to the audience for the first time before they had heard it from the record or so, and how you can explain and you can contextualize this is what the song is about and all that. That's an important part. But by the sound of it, it's important thing to you, like putting your music and art into context.
100%. I mean, it's not a thing of I'm going to explain you why I'm doing something, but it's always beautiful to be like, yo, I'm a storyteller at the end of the day. I love being able to bring you in a world and telling you the story about that world. And I think part of that is also contextualizing, but a healthy balance of it, where you allow people to take their own meaning and their own, their own takeaway from the art. But yeah, it definitely falls into the storytelling side of me, where I love to talk about the music and why we got where we got. And that's just all part of the full journey. And if that helps someone, then that's dope.
Yeah. Recently, there's been a lot of talk here in Scandinavia. We are based in Helsinki currently. Well, we've been based here for some time now. And currently, there's this conversation about awakening the divine feminine, or not just even divine feminine, but just the feminine energy in spaces. So like, I've been working with these academics, people from academia. They're also speaking about, you know, this soft power and feminine energy and balancing things out. And I was wondering also, from your experience as a girl or woman child who grew up on the continent, traveled the world, experienced herself in the diaspora, and then went back home and is still always multi-local, how do you nourish your feminine power and your energy, and how do you identify?
Loaded question. It's just, you know, because of the being able to step outside of home. You know, I always have this conversation with my mom. There's a modern African woman and a traditional African woman. I am not the latter. And being able to travel, you know, just informs new ways of life or new information that you could always take back. And I guess add to the culture, you know, versus forget. There's so many beautiful things in traditional African culture that we carry to this day that has also informed the world. But there are also so many things that we can elevate, you know, not only in Africa, but across the world, about women and their input into society and the world. We see where society is now, where the world is now, where Earth is now. And how that deterioration is because of the lack of balance of feminine energy. And feminine energy isn't just something towards women.
Yeah.
It's something that we can all have. And I think that information is very well needed for other people as well. This is a balance of both, is what we're talking about. We're not just talking about women. And so these are conversations that I could only be privileged to have outside of my home. It's like, okay, well, you want to balance your masculine and feminine energy. This is the way you do it. That's conversations I could never have at home. And I think that growth, I'm able to come back and bring that knowledge with me and then help women like me to identify parts of our lives that we'd like to add this information to. So I don't think I've answered the question.
No, you have.
Put it around it, but it's definitely an ongoing journey. And just realizing that there's more information that's come about that the modern African woman takes on, and it's very healing for us. Very, very healing.
Yeah. I love also the subject of healing because, again, we are speaking on healing the feminine and decolonizing the feminine. I spoke to somebody yesterday who is one of the leading feminist or Black feminist thought leaders in these here parts. And I was saying to her that, like whenever I go to these seminars where she's talking about decolonizing the mind, decolonizing femininity, I always wonder, how does this apply to everyday living? And also, is it only exclusive to academia? And she said to me, do you know what? The hip hop space is one of the biggest grounds for decolonizing the mind and decolonizing the feminine. What do you think of that?
I mean, hip hop, I think people always forget that hip hop was the birthplace of speaking your mind. It was, hey, this is what's happening in our neighborhoods. This is what's happening politically. We're going to speak on that. Like that is that movement's birth. So it's a very important tool when it comes to certain subjects to be able to educate, basically. And when used the wrong way, obviously it lands on the other spectrum. But yeah, I didn't understand the question.
Hip hop as an effective space to you answered the question because it was about hip hop being a space that is conducive for decolonizing the mind and decolonizing the feminine, decolonizing everything.
I think we are also a people of music. We are people who carry information within music, and to have a space like hip hop where you're able to educate and entertain, that's a very powerful tool. And it's definitely, I think, slowly changing where we are allowing feminine energy into hip hop. It's a very hectic masculine space. So, if you bring in feminine energy, it's always looked at as a threat, but it shouldn't be. Like, as we said, feminine energy isn't just about being woman
specific.
It's about balancing the energy within yourself and all aspects of that. And I think the more we are open to such mentality, we'd be able to use hip hop as a healing tool, and hopefully we get to that space.
In a mainstream culture, hip hop culture, mainstream sort of like a rap industry type of thing, there seems to be this idea that women who are in the hip hop who make rap music, there's like a pressure for them to be usually one kind, this kind of like hypersexuality, the whole of that thing that they do in United States, especially in the mainstream. Of course, there's all kinds of artists there. Is that a pressure have you experienced that pressure? Do they come and tell you that, oh, if you do this, then you can triple your sales or whatever? Like, is that a thing that you find?
I've been blessed to have a team where we'd never allow such pressures into our space. For me, it's always been oh man, I don't fit into that sort of thing versus now I have to do that because I've just been always this kid or person who I can't do anything that feels outside of myself. Even when I try, it looks wild. Even when I try, my peoples will be like, yeah, no, don't do that. So for me, I guess earlier on in my career, it was more so of a disappointment and realization that because I don't fit in that space, probably my music wouldn't be more heard than someone who does, or because I can't do that. And it was just like guess it's going to have to take longer sort of situation versus feeling pressure to do that. But that pressure is very real. And it's it's very sad, you know. I think men in hip hop are allowed to facilitate their whole range, whereas women in hip hop are only allowed to express one facet of themselves, which is really unfair because there's so much range in which we could express themselves. But yeah, to answer your question, it's never been a pressure to do that. Like I said, with Lane and everything, I allowed myself to take my time to define my own femininity. I wasn't going to let anyone else define that. And it happened at the correct time. It happened with the correct healing. So I allowed myself to do that myself and express it in the way I wanted my art to come about. But there's definitely that pressure, and it's very, very real.
Yeah, I just changing the lane a little bit. So you're going now back to Australia, which is a place where you spent a significant amount of time, and it's a big, important part of your career as well. And you're going to the Sydney Opera House, no less. I mean, that's really amazing. How is that? How do you feel? Is that a place where you think that you're gonna still be based once more, or is that just a chapter in your book that is already now like written, or you don't know, or how do you relate to that?
Yeah, it has been written. I think, you know, the beautiful purpose and why I went to Australia has been fulfilled. You know, the Renaissance and being part of that, and knowing that, you know, my privilege would add to that whole explosion has been fulfilled. And I'm seeing the flowers of that. A lot of people don't get to see. We have Genesis Owusu, we have Kai, we have so many young Black artists that are just going international and are able to express themselves without worrying about all the stuff we had to worry about when that Renaissance was happening. So I very much feel like my purpose has been fulfilled there. And this is just, you know, a welcome back, a celebration of those times. And then, you know, it will be continuing on into the world, knowing that, you know, I fulfilled, you know, my purpose in Australia. So yeah, this one is a homecoming. Seeing all my peoples and saying goodbye correctly, because it was kind of it's really quick during the pandemic. And then just, you know, continue on with my life.
And where will that be, may I ask, since you are so multi-local?
That one is a good question. I know 3 to 5 months of my time during the year will be spent in Zambia to replenish, to redirect, to create. And then from there, we'll take it to the world and tour and work on it. Not yet sure where the other half of that will be spent, but definitely 3 to 5 months will be a Zambia situation. Yeah.
And how do your followers, your supporters, let's use the word supporters, how do they relate to you when you come back home? When you came back home to Zambia after having traveled and having all these connections to all these different countries, how do they relate to you? How do you relate to being back?
Right. I think for Australians, it was like, oh, she's gone for real. She's not coming back. But it was always part of the story. I was always very adamant of letting people know I was Zambian. And I think, you know, in expressing again, contextualizing why I am where I am. Hey guys, I was born in this country and I've never gotten to be Sampa The Great in my own country. That's wild to me. And
right?
that's something that I need to come face to face with. So I gotta go. That's just part of the journey. And you know, they came to a point where they accepted it, and then coming home and finally answering those "why don't you perform in Zambia" questions, and "why are you never in your home" questions were filled. I got to be home for 2 years straight. Connect with young artists from Zambia, eat home food, eat home food, and just like be within.
Before it was just food. Now it's
home food. And just be within my country with my people, and not having that be any part of the doubt and fear of who I am and where I'm from. That hole is filled because of being home. And I think they understand. They understand that was part of the journey. And yeah.
It's like you've come full circle, but it's so early. You've got so far to still go and so much to still do. Maybe you have many circles. You don't just have one.
Yeah, maybe. I hope so. I hope there's more.
There has to be, because life is progressive that way. But it does seem, and when I see what's been happening and when we hear what you've been doing recently and before, it's been a long, illustrious and not easy career. But here you are. I'm amazed. Well done, you.
It's only the beginning.
I know, right?
Many years, in 5 years is so much. How many lives is that?
Yeah, you said you're not just one thing. Maybe you don't just have one lifetime in this lifetime.
Maybe.
Now you have the new song out with Denzel Curry. It's called The Lane. Lane or The Lane?
Lane. But I like the lane.
There always does something.
Yeah. The sense of occasion. Is that part of a next upcoming project, or is it some kind of standalone thing? What are you? How much are you able to tell us?
I'm not able to say a lot. I think it's a good transition into the new music, like Energy was. You know, we had the return, then we had Energy out of nowhere. I mean, we had BB9, then we had Energy, then we had the return, and just a good transition into that. Not to say that that's the only music style that will be showed in the new music, but I just think it's good to let people know that we're about to show the full range of who Sampa is. That also will expand the music, so it's not just what you've heard, and visually that's also expanded. And I think it was the best song to relay those three points. Can't really say if it's on the next project yet, but it was the best song to relay those 3 points. And just also, you know, being at a point in my life where I'm like, I'm gonna be free enough. I call it the year of authenticity.
Yeah,
free and transparent enough to show all aspects of Sampa. And I think that did the job for me. And then we'll move on to what's next.
Mm-hmm. Year of authenticity. Do you feel like you've been
that.
holding back up till now, or is it just that you're going even extra gear?
I think both. We've had this new music for a while.
It's been new for a while.
And we're just so ready to show the elevation, but also, you know, during the pandemic, it was like, okay, what have you not done? What haven't you challenged yourself to do? And the results of that are going to show. So it's both.
Wow. So yesterday we were speaking to our 10-year-old son and we're saying, we're going to be talking to Sampa the Great. And he's like, Sampa the Great? Says, yeah, that's her name. And he says, it's a she. And I'm like, yes. Now, names in my understanding are programmatic. You know, there's a program encoded in the name we choose and the names we are given. Tell me about your choice of name and how you have traveled, because it's a journey. The Sampa the Great of the original beginning and Sampa the Great of this moment are different because you've evolved.
But that's the beautiful nature of that name. The great is to be the greatest version of yourself. Yeah. That is always a growing thing. Sometimes you go down, sometimes it comes up, but the process will be with me throughout my career. And the goal is to be the greatest version of myself, and hence Sampa the Great. So that will just be something I relate to throughout my career, because that's something that I will always want to be the greatest version of myself. Mm-hmm. And so when that thought process came about, that name stuck. I was like, yeah. I mean, I wanted to use Tembo, you know, Sampa Tembo is really cool. But I think, you know, for me, it was always to strive to be the greatest version of myself, and to keep that as a young note to me as an artist. You know, never feel like you have to go there. Just be the greatest version of yourself. Just strive to be you and consistently grow that until you get to the greatest version of yourself. Yeah.
I will tell him that.
He could put the Great beside his name too. It's not specific to me.
Yes, and Any more thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think this has been really great. I mean, like it doesn't escape us at what point in your life we are talking to you. This is like where you are coming like last month and the next month, and everything is just, I'm sure it's a lot, but it's really, I'm very grateful that you had time to talk to us, and it's been really nice.
Thanks for fitting us in.
Of course, thank you so much for being part of the journey still, and supporting and showing love. That I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. We will continue to do this, and more power and best foot forward. And I can't wait to hear what happens next.
Thank you. Thank you.